Oh man, Steve, thanks for letting me jump in for this half hour too.
I'm glad you're here, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and I also wanted to schedule myself. I saw that Sydney was coming up at the top of this hour, so good to have a chance to say hi to him. Yeah, I mean, I'm just part of the Mercy fan club, honestly. We Mercy came aboard and started making a good impression and driving really.
Speak confirmed.
Yeah,
She couldn't wait. She couldn't wait until our session, so she's in.
yay, good. Um, yeah, so where to start? So yeah, I got involved with Project Catalyst early and had the privilege of meeting Mercy and starting conversations. Josh, you and Mercy and I go back to the days of trying to get Afro FinLab off the ground to drive some conversations, and that's really where my engagement in the Cardano community started. I was still kind of just watching and learning last summer when the Shelley Summit happened, and was had the chance to just hear what Sydney was saying in the chat rooms there, and we started conversations that kind of led to bigger conversations, and when the two of you came aboard, it really took those conversations another level. So yeah, so that was the middle of last year. Then Catalyst started, had the chance to meet up with some other folks in the Catalyst community, combine some proposals, which is something I'm really proud of, and also want to encourage more people to do more often. That's why I was so inspired the last half hour. Just thinking about how Catalyst is becoming this place where people show up with ideas and then find the people they need to kind of come together and make those things happen. So that's really what we're doing at Gimbalabs. We call it Gimbalabs because a gimbal is a balancing force, and if you have a couple of them, you can do a lot, right? One by itself only gets you one dimension, but if you put three of them together, you have 360-degree motion and the ability to kind of adapt to any situation. And so what we're really trying to do is look at the things that we want to see happen, and then drill down to what needs to happen in order for those dreams to come true. So I hope that we can continue talking to other teams, and when there are teams showing up who need support in one way or another, we're going to try to provide that. So for example, one thing we've been doing lately at Gimbalabs, we call it the playground, where we come in with an idea and we say, all right, well, it would be really cool to build an event ticketing system, or it would be really cool to build a digital rights management platform. All right, so how do we do that, right? Given the tools that we have so far, where does that take us? And often it leads us down these rabbit holes. And so we go deep into those, and we study the tech, and we try to figure out, hey, given the options we have, what's the best way to accomplish something? So we're in the thick of that right now. And where Wada comes in is that the co-founders of Gimbalabs along with me are Julie Montag and Roberto Morano. Roberto's initial idea, he's been a stake pool operator since the beginning of the ITN. And his initial idea in Catalyst was to create accessible endpoints for people like the New Horizons team who want to build something, right? And might need some technical support or infrastructure to launch that. So Dandelion APIs provide that, but there's also a lot more that we need to do. For example, if Roberto's serving up these APIs, he shouldn't be the only person doing that. So over the next few weeks, what we're hoping to do with Wada is use a containerized process for teaching people to be SPOs. We could talk more about that in a minute. And then to build on top of that, the ability to spin up, for example, Dandelion servers so that more people have reliable access to bring their ideas to life. So that was probably sufficiently all over the place, right? Does that give us anything to
that was
talk about?
wonderful. Wonderful. That's really, really good overview of what you're doing. I think the only part that might have been missed was the fact that Gimbalabs got funded by Catalyst itself. So not everyone might know that, but they were one of the first projects that got funding. So we're very excited about that, and the fact that we are connected through a podcast called Afro FinLab, which we will have, one of the co-founders of that coming on just after this session to talk more about his involvement and how he got to know Wada as well. But I think at this point we'll open it up for discussions, possibly around education and how we give access to education for people that might be on the ground level, might not even have computers themselves. How do we actually go through that whole process with them to get them the education that they deserve?
There's a lot of different entry points for answering that question. So two for us to focus on, right, are learning through experience and prioritizing ways for people to begin to trust each other. Okay, so I want to take the second one first. So one of my favorite ways to describe Cardano to folks who are maybe still skeptical about it is to say, look, think about any situation in your life where if you had a little bit more trust, you'd be able to do more, right? If you could trust a stranger, right? And I think, and so given a little bit more background on myself, I've spent most of my adult career as a high school math teacher. And then I left the classroom to start training other teachers. And what really brought me here is that Cardano was the first thing that I saw that could clearly have a greater impact on education, on education than the public school system that I was working in, right? It's public schools, it's a complicated issue, getting schools to work. But I'm a dreamer, and I believe that we can still live in a world where public education is an important factor in giving people agency and more freedom. And that's the opportunity I see in Cardano. And the reason for that is that it builds up opportunities for people to come together, learn from each other, and trust each other in a way that maybe wasn't possible before. What we're working on with Gimbalabs is this idea of teaching people how much is maybe appropriate to trust somebody else, right? You shouldn't just go into a venture and start throwing money and time at it if you're not sure where other people are coming from. And so we are moving forward with this approach of telling people, hey, don't trust us. Let us give you a way to verify this and learn how to do it yourself. And containerization plays a role in that, right? Rick can tell you how hard it is to spin up a stake pool, right? This is something that we shouldn't just trust anybody with, right? But can we verify that the people running pools have the skills, can be trusted, and as new layers of functionality come online, what role can stake pool operators play in maybe being cornerstones, not just of the Cardano community, but in their local hubs, in their local communities, right? What if we lived in a world where everybody knew their friendly neighborhood stake pool operator, right? And could trust that not only was this thing contributing to a global network, but was also a source of connection and value creation in a local community. So that's really what we want to roll out. We finally set up the Gimbal stake pool. We wanted to do it in a way that was modeled after the way that Roberto has done it. And now that we have that model, we want to teach other SPOs, prospective SPOs, to use that. One of the big problems right now is that there's very few places on the African continent where you can set up a bare metal server and have it run a reliable stake pool. The reason is, right, there's intermittent electricity, intermittent access to a network, right? Well, I live in one of the most highly connected areas of the entire globe. I'm in the Northeast United States. Electricity and internet access are pretty stable here. And yet the stake pool that I'm running is in Warsaw, Poland, okay? And the reason for that is we saw, hey, there's a data center there that doesn't yet have a stake pool running. Let's use this containerized deployment to spin one up there and just test out the process of working with that, right? Get just enough control that we can verify that it's working and then show other people how to do the same. So ideally, while we continue to advocate for connectivity and electricity, right, we can still teach people how to run this process remotely, right? Because for me to interact with a remote server, I don't need as strong a connection as if I was trying to run a block producing node out of wherever I have access to a machine.
Yeah, so true. And I think focusing on the stake pool aspect is key when also rolling out some of these hubs, right? Because we're also trying to educate, but we're also trying to make them sustainable at the same time. So I think that pairing of education plus stake pool is going to be so key for us, and why I'm glad, we're having these conversations next week and moving forward also.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be interesting, James, is James Kelly is experimenting with Starlink, and he's finding the pain points in trying to use Starlink to bring up a stake pool using that technology, because that Starlink will really help with the connectivity in Africa, in any remote region, really any remote region in the world, because it's on satellite, of course. But he's finding just little bits here and there that I've heard from him. So I'll talk with James Kelly and maybe get you guys in touch, and he can give you some feedback on maybe what he's seen so far as he's trying to bring up the node, because it's doesn't work the same as the regular public internet, where if you connect through a wire or a fiber or whatever the case may be, there are some differences, and so he's working on that. I'll let you know that as well. Awesome. Another cool thing, would you be interested in that feedback?
Oh my gosh, 100%. And you think, I think Starlink is going to play such a critical piece here, right? I think a lot of us in the Cardano community, it's kind of a meme to try to engage Elon Musk, right? But there's going to be a moment when it happens, right? And when people see, oh, wait a minute, stake pool plus Starlink means freedom for people who maybe haven't had it before, right? Or for a new level of self-efficiency. Like, that moment is gonna happen, right? And it's when it does, it's gonna happen so quickly. And so what we can do to kind of make that moment come sooner is just fund the first couple of Starlink connections, and then show that it's working with stake pools. And then this community run stake pool, right? This Wada hub run stake pool funds the next Starlink connection, which then opens up another pool and another connection. And suddenly there's going to be this critical point where it's like, oh crap, right, okay, people have figured it out. People have done that hard work of how to make a stake pool work over Starlink. And now we've got documentation that we can just share with anybody. And right. And there's no intermediary here, right? It's just open source tools, and then access to the infrastructure itself, which in this case, I do think Starlink is really promising. Maybe something else is going to come out of the blue and surprise us. But, for now, that seems like the best thing to prioritize, right? And once you see that you can combine those two things, and then you throw a Dandelion server on top of that, which gives everybody in your community access to building solutions on Cardano. Maybe this becomes part of the scavenger hunts, right? I just think there's a lot of moving pieces, and each one moves the other one forward until we're all going to wake up one day and say, oh, wow, okay, like the idea, people get the idea now.
Yeah, and James, I did have a question in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
It was from Kellen Abrahamus, and it says, how do we get in touch with this information and education? So I'll come back to that question in a moment, because what I tried to do was I went on IdeaScale and I searched Gimbalabs, spelled Gimbalabs. And the responses are not very good. So IdeaScale needs some work. And we need education on how to use IdeaScale. Then I searched James and it came up Gimbalabs. Okay, so the question there, I can screen share and I'll show you guys exactly what I mean in a few minutes. But the question was, how do we get in touch with this information and education? I can drop a link in the chat. James, do you have anything you'd like to say on that?
So for now, the best place to go is we have a Discord server that's kind of serving as our initial hub, and I'll grab a link for that in just a minute. And maybe I can let Steve talk to this, like how the conversations in there have been evolving. I mean, basically the grand experiment is if we throw a bunch of people in to a place where they are open to what they're trying to figure out and trying to understand, and open to bringing ideas and looking for collaborators, good things happen, right? So we're asking people just to throw their hats into the ring, start working. We are trying to create a space where people can engage with as much autonomy as they want, right? We in this world where we are starting to generate new wealth, ideally the outcome is that is not stockpiles of wealth, but just more people spending more time doing the things they actually want to do, right? That's what money is supposed to do for us, right? Is give us the time to engage with the world in the way we want to. I know it doesn't always work out that way. This is the heartbreaking thing for me about DeFi, right? DeFi is all about just making number go up, whereas wealth is about using your time the way you really want to. So we're trying to build a spot where people can show up and say, look, in a perfect world, this is the thing I really want to work on, and I need help doing it, right? So where does the reliability for that come from? And so, if for people who are just showing up, it can be a little overwhelming to pop into that Discord server at first. And I just want everybody to know that we recognize that. That's kind of by design, because we're kind of still in the storming and coming together phase. But what starts to happen is people come together and they say, oh, you know what? Your idea and my idea, those actually do support each other. Let's go study that for a little while and let's see what comes back. And the people who work on that, they figure out a little solution that maybe somebody else needs. And again, you grow from there, right? We're building towards, in all of these cases, towards that network effect of understanding. Yeah, so I'll grab a Discord link right after this session and drop it in.
Okay, we'll get that in there. So the Discord link and IdeaScale. I know I've mentioned it a few times. Thanks for answering that question. I think you covered that very well. If you want, I can share the idea, screen share that real quick.
Yeah.
I think we're okay on time. And next up, let me show people that briefly here, because I keep saying the word, but it's better if they look at it. Let me make sure I do it correctly. And there we go. So here's the IdeaScale, Cardano.ideascale.com. I searched Gimbalabs, like I said here. So IdeaScale does still need some work, and I think we need some training on how people can use it effectively. What's the easiest way to find the information I'm looking for? Now I searched Gimbalabs. Now if I search James, okay, and then, oh, look, now I found Gimbalabs. So here I am. Okay. So is this the one you currently have out there? I saw this one was in March.
That's right.
This is the one that's currently approved?
That's right. That's the Fund 4 proposal. And so we linked to our initial Fund 2 proposal here, so people can see where we're coming from, what got funded in Fund 2. You can see the link to the website as it is right now there as well. This proposal what we're really prioritizing is building out the little project teams that are going to start to have a real impact on the ecosystem. So we've identified that, yes, we really want to move to the point of engaging end users, right? Like, so for me, when I spoke about autonomy a minute ago, for me, what I would love to do is, when the world reopens fully from the pandemic, a lot of people are going to want to get out and spend time doing things together. So I think by next summer, 2022, I want to see, music and food festivals across the globe with all sorts of cool Cardano technology running under the hood and audience participation and that kind of thing. That alone is not the key idea that's going to change the world. That just happens to be what I really want to work on, right? I want to look at what we can do, and I think the more people working on the thing they want to work on, the happier we're going to all be, but the more realistic results we're going to see. Now, in order to get to that point where we're kind of quietly putting this new technology in people's hands and they're having these new experiences and going, wow, holy smokes, that was really cool. That was a good experience. How'd you do that? And we'll say, well, let us tell you about this thing called Cardano, right? In order to get to that point, we need development work. So the Fund 4 proposal is focused on building up developer capacity, building up a habit of tinkering and experimenting and maybe sometimes being surprised about where it ends up. And we believe that if we can engage developers that way now, it's going to give us more potential to engage with everyday people really soon. Then I guess I could say a word about Fund 5 Catalyst as well. In Fund 5, we're really excited because we have a few small proposals. Each one is kind of specialized to different outcomes. And so what we're doing as an organization is really trying to use Catalyst as a way so that everybody who has a stake in Catalyst, and therefore a small stake in us, because that's how we got funded to start, the Catalyst process is going to give community members a way of saying to us, hey, here's what we think you guys should prioritize now. We're going to vote yes on this proposal, but no on that one. And that's going to guide our efforts towards where we can make the best impact. Yeah.
Also a similar approach to how Wada is looking at its projects as well. So you can see this alignment coming with a lot of these different organizations that are having a similar approach. What's really interesting is where you can start to see alignments happen, where you start to see proposals that are very similar, as James mentioned earlier, and then they start to merge, they start to combine. So what not everyone might know is that Gimbalabs is actually a merge of several ideas that happened. Is that right, James?
Yeah, we're really trying to be advocates for people to really, when you browse IdeaScale, especially if you're a proposer, look for those people you align with, right? And during Fund 2, I just tried to have conversations with everybody. So meeting Mercy, that was like, oh yeah, we're going to keep talking. That's great. That was an easy one. And then meeting up with Roberto for the first time, we were looking at each other like, wait, did we know each other in a previous life? Like, how did we find out we're so aligned on some of these big picture things, right? And it doesn't matter who you align with. All of us have affinity for different people. That's the point. And Catalyst is big enough that it brings together such an amazing variety of folks. I feel confident guaranteeing that there's a match for everybody out there. But you got to do the work of looking for that person, right? Or that group of people, and then be open-minded enough to say, all right, I brought my idea to the table, but actually, if I combine it with this other thing, I might lose a little bit of my individual ownership of this thing, while in turn being part of something even bigger than I could have hoped for alone.
I mean, it sounds like you just described Wada there as well, in terms of how we run projects.
Yeah,
So
that's the dream.
it's very true. And some of the principles we have is, number one, be inclusive, let everyone participate as much as possible, but also celebrate differences. So let people have that autonomy to discover who they are, discover how they want to contribute, and what their purpose is, and if it aligns with the larger purpose of the group.
That's right. So Mercy, this week we're gonna create some transactions to thank people for the funding of Wada over the last few days, right?
Yeah.
But we made a deal. We made a deal, right? I want to, it would be one thing for just me or somebody else on the Gimbalabs team to create those transactions, but we're not going to do that, right? We're going to train people. And this is such a perfect entry point to build up the expertise that we are looking to build. Okay, so this